you'll miss it in the text. Because every time when we look at the text, the disciples say to the master, they say, this man was born blind. Who sinned? Him or his mama or his daddy? Who sinned? Jesus looks at them and he says, did nobody sin, but I allowed this to come upon him that the glory of God might be manifest in him. The thing that I'm struggling with is only so the glory of God could be manifested in my life. The issue that I've been suffering with was only so the glory of God could be manifested in my life. I'm going through this, but I know that there's glory on the other side. Come on and slap that person next to you and tell them there's glory on the other side. Yeah, I struggle. I struggle. Things wasn't always right. I thought they was going to cut off my lights. I thought they was going to repossess my car. I thought that they was going to foreclose on my house. But I don't care what's going on in my life. It was for my glory. See, because what the text tells us is that if you're a believer and if you stand for Christ, you're always going to have evidence.
Yes.
Have you been hiding the evidence of your transformation? Have you been hiding the evidence of your deliverance because you didn't want nobody to know that God brought you out of that?
Come on now.
Come on now. The Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. Yeah, you got halfway out with the blood of the Lamb, but you didn't open your mouth to give God no glory. And so because you didn't give God no glory, you ain't fully overcome it. And so what he says to him, he says, now, after 10 days, their countenance was fatter and fuller than everybody else who was around them.
My God.
Give me 10 days just doing what God said do. Give me 10 days just going to the place where God said go. Give me 10 days just in the center of God's will. And I promise you, if you put me next to an unbeliever, if you put me next to somebody that ain't got Jesus, I'll show them. See, it used to be that the saints asked God, show up and show out. But the thing about it is, in order for God to show up and show out, he got to show up in you so he can show out to the world. We don't want him to show up and show out no more because we don't want him to show up in us so he can show out to the world. But I'm here to declare tonight that if you put me in the presence of an unbeliever, you look at me and you look at them, I'm going to be better. I'm going to my seat. But if you could just look at somebody and tell them, put me next to somebody who's an unbeliever and I'm going to be better. Now they had my scholarship application on the table with somebody that didn't bless you, God. Put me next to that scholarship application and I'm going to be better. They had my loan application next to the person's loan application who was an unbeliever. So put my loan application next to their loan application, and I'm going to be back. No, you don't like that. No, you don't like that. No, put my transcript next to somebody that don't know how to give God glory. Come on now. If you put my stuff next to the person that's an unbeliever, the evidence is always going to be clear that I stood for God, that I was faithful to what God said, that I did it the way that God said do it, that I didn't compromise. Put me next to them.
Come on now.
But see, let me bless you young people because I got to go. Whenever you compromise, when people put you next to unbelievers, you don't look better. Whenever you defile yourself, when they put you next to an unbeliever, it ain't going to be no difference there. This is why the Bible says, no, I want to see a difference. I want to know those that are holy and unholy. I want to know those that are clean and unclean, because there's got to be a difference with those that love me. Now, we can shout, but you know what? That's not going to help you tonight.
All right.
We can dance, and nothing wrong with dance. Trust me, I got happy feet. I got to dance. But that's not going to bless you tonight. God, in this time, is calling for a generation that's not going to compromise. Let me tell you what he's saying. What he's saying is that he wants a holy seed.
Oh, have mercy. Jesus.
One of the things everybody thinks when they talk about the things that Daniel ate when he asked for a pulse. But when you study the word, what you discover is that what he's really talking about is, what he says to him, he says, give us this to eat. What he said, the literal translation is, give us things to eat that are of the ground. Because anything that grows out of the ground is not unclean. Anything that grows out of the ground, the first of it is always holy unto the Lord. Yeah. The Lord planted you in this place. He brought you to this convention for this weekend for a specific purpose. And now, because you're in the ground, guess what? There is some holy seed that's got to now begin to come up in you. He's looking for holy seed. He's looking for a royal priesthood. So now, we need to be frank and honest with one another. Sometimes we know we've compromised what God told us to do. We thought that because our parents weren't there and because we were in a different land and because we were in captivity, that it was okay to do what they were doing. But God has called us to a different standard. He's called us to be a royal priesthood. He's called us to be holy seed unto him. I want to pray for you. All this week when I did prayer, you notice I didn't make an altar call. Didn't make an altar call because I already told y'all what happens in altar calls. Everybody lies during an altar call.
No.
So you got to know this. Salvation is instantaneous, but it's also progressive. Yeah. So what happens every time we do an altar call is we say, is there anyone that will come to God? Is there anyone, the doors of the church are open? Is there one? Is there one? And everybody sits there and says, okay, I know I went up one time and I got saved. But because you don't understand that salvation is instantaneous and it's also progressive, it means that every time that God takes you to a new level, you got to ask him to save you and fill you all over again. Right. That if there comes any level of breach in your relationship, you got to get back and come up again. Now, guess what? Most of us are so concerned about what people are going to think when we come that we don't come. Yes, I'd rather for everybody in the church to think I'm a whore and I'm going to hell than to miss what God is trying to do in my life.
Yeah. Come on now.
So all this week, all I want to do is just talk to you and just build a wall. That's all I want to do. I want to give you a foundation. Because sometimes I know when we come to church, see, preaching in church is very difficult. Because you're talking to people who are at so many different levels in their walk with God. And so you're trying to make sure that you don't miss anyone. That's why people don't understand. Pastoral preaching is much different than evangelistic preaching. See, when they bring me in, I can get out in 30 minutes. I'm not your pastor. No, let me help you. So it means I can come in and I can just use my machine gun and just like, okay? The pastor is feeding the flock. So that means he has to give each sheep that's in the flock exactly what they need to survive. Yes. So yes, 15 minutes of the sermon may have been yours and now you're ready to leave, but you forgot sister so-and-so needed that extra 5 minutes. That brother over there needed 2 more minutes. That sister over there needed 10 more minutes. And so you look at it, you be like, I got mine and I'm ready to go. And I'm looking like the Bible says, rejoice with them that rejoice. You can't get happy because your brother's rejoicing.
All right.